Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. My name is Gabby Snyder, and I'm joined here with Ben Kiriakou for the second to last round of stream we'll be featuring today for the Victory Road World Cup, brought to you by Elgato. I got a little
Yeah,
mixed up because this is my final round, but it's also the final second to last round being played by the United States versus El Salvador, so should be a good one.
yeah, it's going to be a really quite exciting match. You've seen the team preview just on your screen there, and I'm really looking forward to how this match is going to be shaken up because it's always one of those games that goes either way. But before we get too far into that, let's have a quick look here at the United States versus El Salvador. And it is the United States that are going to be carrying their team on to the top eight. Unfortunately, El Salvador not being able to pull in enough wins to make it through. But there's been some quite interesting picks through the week here, especially on the United States team with that some slightly outside picks. We've got some Mimikyu coming in here, but I can see a little bit of a Dusclops in the corner of my screen there, Gabby.
Also, too, Gyarados, which is a Pokemon that we haven't seen do well since the beginning of the Generation 8 VGC format. So, really exciting to see the creativity on the United States side of the field. And it looks like there were some close matches between the two countries, even though the United States has been able to squeak out a win. Regardless of the result of these next two matches. We'll be featuring Kyle Livinghouse versus Jaime Vicente on stream here today. So let's go ahead and take a look at these two trainers and take a deeper look at their teams.
Yeah, these two players really great to be able to showcase here. Kyle Livinghouse, the first we are going to rocking that Zacian, Dragapult, Rillaboom, Urshifu, likely Rapid Strike, Volcarona, and Landorus Ferian form are getting top 8 in the 2019 North American International Championships, as well as in 2018 getting a top 16 spot, and in the 2018 World Championships getting to that all-important Day 2 qualification.
On the opposite side of the field, we'll be featuring Jaime Vicente, also running the Volcarona, the Rillaboom, and the Incineroar. Many trainers we've seen today, but choosing a Xerneas, a Regieleki, and a Therian to accompany it. So should be a really fun matchup to see how Xerneas and Volcarona are going to fare against Kyle's team. We've seen a lot of these two Pokemon paired together recently, and it always puts the opponent in an interesting spot where you have to pick sort of which Pokemon are you less afraid of going for those stat ups, as at the end of the day, after a couple Quiver Dances, Volcarona can be even more threatening than Xerneas, which is very surprising for me coming from past metagames that Volcarona has been present in.
Definitely. It says, way back in the day, it used to be one of those Pokemon that was really, really dangerous. The old top buff formats back in my day of 2013, and then it sort of dropped off a little bit. Got a little bit more difficult to use, and come back with a vengeance in Series 10, being one of those Pokemon that's so good against Zacian. And of course, you need a Pokemon that's that good against Zacian when you're running a Xerneas team. So I think is gonna have a good time being able to try and get that Volcarona to do as much of the business as it can in this match.
Yeah, let's get this match started, as even though this won't be a deciding match for the US versus El Salvador, it should be a very exciting match for just Zacian versus Xerneas. Like you mentioned, the Volcarona is going to be really important for Jaime so that the Volcarona can properly threaten that Zacian. But the one thing that also jumps out at me about these two teams is that I feel like Kyle and Jaime could both make the decision to leave their restricted Pokemon behind, and they would still have a very good matchup against their opponent.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one actually, because if you're the Jaime being if you're Kyle being the Zacian player, you kind of want to bring it, but equally looking down the face of both a Landorus, an Incineroar, and a Volcarona, it can be quite tempting not to bring that Zacian to the match, because you know that it's either going to have lots of Intimidates forced down upon it, or it's going to have the Volcarona, which it can't really touch at all. Of course, if that was the case, if Zacian wasn't brought to the match, and then Jaime decided to bring the Xerneas, then you'd have to go back to the drawing board. I think if you're Kyle, is to think, well, actually, can I leave the Zacian at home just at the risk of bringing whether Jaime brings his Xerneas or not?
Yeah, it's definitely something I think to keep in mind for game 2, possibly even game 3 between these two trainers. But for now, it looks like Jaime is starting this game off with the Volcarona and the Landorus Therian, Zacian and Urshifu out on the field for Kyle. So already Kyle finds himself in a bit of a tough spot for this Zacian, thanks to Landorus's Intimidate, getting rid of that Intrepid Sword boost, and also the Volcarona threatening not only just damage on the Zacian, but possibly a burn onto the Urshifu or the Zacian as well, which would be really detrimental for these two physically attacking Pokemon.
Definitely, and of course, if that Landorus is one of the really physically bulky ones that carries that rocky helmet, Urshifu's not going to like launching a Surging Strikes into that slot either. Of course, we've got to, Jaime's got to work out whether that Urshifu is Choice Scarfed or not, or whether it's going to be able to attack before the Volcarona, and how that interacts with the big attacks coming out from the Zacian, going straight for the Behemoth Blade into the Volcarona, doing actually a quite respectable damage there, nearly half damage. Ooh! First hit, first flame body of the match here as Volcarona goes for that Quiver Dance, getting that boost in its special attack, special defense, and speed. And presumably a follow-up here coming out from the Landorus, not the Urshifu. So some well-trained Pokemon on Jaime's side of the field as Urshifu does launch out that Surging Strike. It's going to get 3 critical hits into the just 1 critical hit, in fact, into the Volcarona. Oh my god!
I shouldn't have said anything. I shouldn't have said anything.
2 flame bodies. Oh my god, that's Caster's Curse going out right here as Kyle takes yet a second burn for his troubles. Oh my god.
I am so sorry, Kyle. I know that we are technically commentating this after it happened, but retroactively, I apologize for giving you that double burn, because that is going to really impact how Kyle is able to play out this game moving forwards. You saw, even with just the neutral attack stat on that Zacian, it hardly did any damage to that opposing Volcarona. And yeah, the Volcarona's gone. You don't have to worry about any of your other Pokemon being burned, but your 2 main attackers that you brought into this game have unfortunately essentially had their damage halved. Going against the Rillaboom and the Landorus, well, you still have to worry about the type advantages on Jaime's side of the field, which is why I'm not surprised to see Kyle locked in a switch for the start of this turn. It's just not safe for Zacian and Urshifu on the field right now.
No, definitely not. And Landorus is a good switch into both of these targets. Earth Power on Jaime's Landorus isn't going to get reduced damage at all from that Intimidate, but, it's still going to lower the damage coming out onto some attacks from potentially the Volcarona that's switching in, maybe like a Rock Slide. Rillaboom launches out a Grassy Glide, does hit into that Volcarona on the switch in, but we finally see the Flame Body not activating here as U-Turn follows up from Jaime's Landorus and goes back to Jaime, doing a little bit of damage to Kyle's Landorus.
Just a little bit, unfortunately. I feel really bad for Kyle, as the double burn does mean that he is going to be fighting the rest of this game uphill. I think a fortunate thing for him is that the Landorus and the Volcarona have a decent matchup against this Incineroar and Rillaboom. Jaime can go for a flinch onto one of these 2 Pokemon this turn. It's possible you could switch one of your burned Pokemon in to take that flinch and take some damage, knowing that chances are it's not going to be helpful that much later on in the game. But I think the curious thing that I want to focus on is how much these Landorus and Incineroar rotate around on Jaime and Kyle's side of the field. A lot of times when dealing with physical attackers in the Series 10 metagame especially, you do see a lot of very aggressive switching, and I'm curious if that's going to play out, given that we've already seen some major Pokemon on both sides.
Yeah, well, one switch is already happening this turn as the Rillaboom does go for the U-turn and launches back into Jaime's side of the field as Fake Out comes in from the Incineroar, stopping that Volcarona going for sort of Quiver Dance or any attacks this turn. Landorus, of course, coming in the second Intimidate, launching onto the field. But not going to matter too much for this Earth Power coming out from Landorus. Going to knock the Incineroar, on Jaime's side of the field down to just under half of its health and no barrier activation here. So it could be indication of a safety goggles here from that Incineroar, and that lack of recovery item could hurt Jaime going forward.
I like the reveal of the Earth Power on Kyle's Landorus, though, as that means he doesn't have to as much being intimidated or even being burned from the opposing side of the field, since he will have a special attack to fall back on.
Yeah, exactly. Rock Tomb coming out from the Jaime's Landorus into that Volcarona, but wisely protecting there from Kyle, not taking any rock-type damage whatsoever as a U-turn comes out onto that Incineroar, and Kyle is going to switch back straight away into the Shifu, which I think even Burnt is really quite good in this situation as it does still do some damage. Parting Shot coming out from Incineroar, going to be launching itself back onto Jaime's side of the field and bring that Rillaboom in straight away to start pressuring that Urshifu on Kyle's side of the field. But I think after Intimidate, that Volcarona's not going to feel too bad about going for a Quiver Dance in the face of a Rock Tomb.
I definitely agree. And the other thing that I can't help but wonder about is whether or not this Urshifu will take the opportunity to go for Detect this turn. Volcarona, rather than going for like a Quick Dance, could go for an attack there. There are still many options for Kyle to figure out how exactly he wants to handle the presence of that Rillaboom. The nice thing about Urshifu is because you can use Surging Strikes to attack, it doesn't have to worry about Intimidate as much. For some moves, the damage will be reduced, but the given critical hit with Surging Strikes means that it's just as effective as it would be burned against this Landorus. So really good opportunity to get some damage down onto the field, but you just have to be careful about this Rillaboom in the process.
You do, and one Pokemon that's not going to have to worry too much about that Rillaboom is Zacian. Switches in for Kyle. Double switch though coming out here, getting that Landorus back on the field to probably take an attack from that Rillaboom, and certainly be able to take an attack for that Landorus as well. A Rillaboom on Jaime's side of the field, going for a grassy glide, in fact, into the Landorus that Kyle just switched in there. The Rock Tomb going into Zacian, but not sure that's too impactful now, even though it's going to get its speed dropped, probably going to be slower than Landorus on Jaime's side of the field. After it's burnt, it's less problematic if that Zacian goes down.
Exactly. At this point, Kyle's best use of the Zacian is going to be to put Pokemon within range of attacks from the other Pokemon on his team. We do get some nice information about the Zacian, as we do have the benefit of watching from Kyle's perspective that it is running 3 attacks and no substitute. That's going to be really key in future games, but for now, the best thing Zacian can do is just buy time and allow for a Pokemon like Landorus to slowly chip away at his opponent.
Yeah, exactly. As Earth Power goes into that Protect on the Zacian, a U-turn goes into the Rillaboom, but not before a knockoff. Takes away that Assault Vest from Kyle's Landorus as it goes back to Kyle once again in favor of either Volcarona or the Urshifu coming out. It looks like it's going to be that Volcarona, and now we're in a position where those Intimidates are starting to rack up onto the Landorus on Jaime's side of the field.
And I'm curious if we're going to see Jaime switch out that Landorus as a result of the Intimidate starting to add up, or if knowing the Zacian is burned is just enough to keep it out onto the field. The Volcarona is going to struggle to deal damage to the Landorus, and as a result, I think it really comes down to how many Behemoth Blade it would take to pick up a knockout. If Rock Tomb is still a 2-hit knockout on that Volcarona, then it's possible you just go for that attack and worst case scenario, you're at least chipping away your opponent's Pokemon, like we've seen Kyle do consistently for the past few turns.
But we'll see if he does that or goes for the Earth Power again into Zacian as Landorus switches in favor of Zacian, gets that Intimidate onto the field, and just a hard switch there from the Rillaboom into Incineroar coming out from Hamey. So no trying to go for the U-turn, respecting the fire attacks that could come out from Volcarona on Kyle's side of the field, and is going to be a fiery dance coming out from Kyle. Going to be launching into that Incineroar and doing sort of pretty good damage, actually. Getting that special attack drop, special attack boost, in fact, though, as Rock Tomb comes out from the Landorus, is enough to pick up the KO with a critical hit. I think that's very, very important there, as it probably wouldn't have picked up the KO otherwise. But a good knockout there for Hamey's. Definitely, that's definitely put him on the front foot now that both trainers are in the position where they only can switch one Pokemon at a time.
Yeah, really some unfortunate luck for Kyle all around in this game, but still able to keep this match very close, which goes to show just how powerful I think these Pokemon are together. Even though Urshifu is burned, it's still going to be able to knock out the Incineroar this turn, assuming it sticks around on the field, and that Landorus is still relatively healthy for both these trainers. I'm very curious to see how Jaime is going to adjust, knowing that this is probably his last turn with 3 Pokemon on the field, assuming he doesn't switch that Incineroar out immediately. And if so, whether or not he's going to be able to keep this momentum moving forwards once he's unable to switch. But for now, just fake out into that Urshifu for a flinch.
Yeah, and followed up with an Earth Power into that Urshifu. Not enough to pick up the KO, so looks like it's quite a bulky Urshifu, one that can certainly take some hits. A U-turn coming out from Kyle, going to be launching that Landorus back into his side of the field when bringing out the Zacian in its place. So burnt and unintimidated, just like we like him in this format. Zacian getting that Intrepid Sword boost and taking a little bit more damage from the burn here.
I wonder if Jaime is going to reveal a Protect or something on Landorus in this turn. I don't think Landorus necessarily has it. Honestly, he could probably go for a Earth Power or another Rock Tomb here and still get the knockouts that he's looking for this turn. But I think Kyle's in a position where he has to, pick up the KO on the Incineroar with the Urshifu this turn. And then you also double into that slot so that if the Incineroar does switch out, you are able to ensure that your opponent can no longer switch and give yourself the best chance you have at making up for the bad luck earlier.
Yeah, indeed. And Behemoth Blades coming out from the Landorus, from the Zacian into the Landorus does just a bit less than half and does reveal that Rocky Helmet, so would have been a very difficult target to be knocking out without taking a lot of damage for your troubles, especially with that Urshifu and the Surging Strikes. U-turn, though, coming out before the Urshifu is able to move, bringing in that Rillaboom. Going to be a follow-up here from Urshifu, getting that Surging Strikes off, and it's going to land into the Rillaboom, I believe, based on what we saw lock in, and it's doing almost no damage here. So a real understanding there of the speed interactions there between Hamey and Kyle's 2 Pokemon. As we see a Flare Blitz coming out from that Incineroar, he's going to be enough to easily knock out the Zacian, and Hamey has been able to maintain his switch potential now. In fact, recoil damage from the Incineroar is enough to knock it out there. Apologies. So both trainers going down to 2 and 2, but that Urshifu is going to be locked in front of a Rillaboom, which has grassy terrain in play, and of course these 2 Landorus are going to end the game with facing each other down.
And the Landorus on Kyle's side of the field has taken more damage by just a sliver than Jaime's own Landorus, which I am very curious if we're going to get more ideas of what moves these Landorus are holding. We do see Jaime's Intimidate from that Landorus activate first, This could be an indication that Landorus is faster. We'll have to see how this plays out. But all of these things are going to be super important to keep an eye on as we move forward with this game, since, like you said, this game's very easily going. We've only seen Earth Power revealed for these Pokemon so far.
Yeah, exactly. And the Rock Tomb from Hamy's Landorus T, of course, as well. The Aqua Jet does come from the Urshifu going into the Landorus, knocking itself out with a Rocky Helmet damage. So nothing else to speak of or to mention too much that turn. But it's now going to be Landorus and Rillaboom versus Landorus, and Kyle doesn't look like he's getting the better end of the stick on that front.
No, that was a really rough match for Kyle, as the double burn turn 1 really turned there were a couple of moves that would have been knockouts most likely that he just didn't get access to because of that burn. And then on top of all that, you also add the critical hit that took out the Volcarona to mitigate all the Intimidate drops that had been on that Landorus at that point in time. So, like, if you take out those factors, I think it definitely would have fallen in Kyle's favor. Even with all of that nasty luck, Kyle was still able to keep things pretty relatively well matched with Jaime, and I think that's a good indication of how he needs to approach this game too. You follow the similar strategy. You hope that you're a little bit luckier. You try and chip away at that Volcarona a little bit with a Pokemon that's more distant, I would say, than the contact required for Flame Body to activate. But no, you know that you have the right tools. It's just a matter of getting your rolls to all line up so that they're not all natural ones. On Jaime's side of the field, though, I really like how he played that game. You know, he did not see the Xerneas make an appearance, despite the fact that the team, you know, has that as its restricted Pokemon. I think that's something he has to go with moving forwards. Maybe try and bait your opponent into those situations where Flame Body can activate, so that way you can ensure that the luck that happened that first game wasn't necessarily a fluke. Volcarona usually does have a Rage Powder, and if you're expecting another strong start from Kyle with like Zacian and Urshifu, or even just one of those two Pokemon, I think setting up the Volcarona to be a target of their attacks early on really will give you the best opportunity to ensure what happened in Game 1 happens again in Game 2.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Gabby. One of the other things I was just thinking about is the Urshifu and how that matches up in speed versus Landorus on Hamy's side of the field, and just how that makes it slightly more difficult to react and interact with these Pokemon. We saw that it was able to U-turn out and consistently protect itself from those surging strikes. And if it does go for an Aqua Jet, then it's doing a lot less damage and taking a little bit of Rocky Helmet chip as well for its trouble. So we see here these two players both adjusting from Game 1. We see Kyle leading off with that Zacian and Volcarona, and Rillaboom and Volcarona from Hamy's side of the field, and it looks like a bit of a boosting lead from both players.
It does, and I feel so bad for Zacian because I don't think it's going to be able to join in on the boosting party, so to speak. Even if you are confident your opponent's going to be going for a Quiver Dance to match your own Quiver Dance in this example, you don't leave Zacian on the field in this situation. It's just too easy for something to go wrong and for you to lose one of your critical Pokemon early on in the game.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, Zacian switches out into the Landorus. Rillaboom also switching out, so no fake outs coming here. But maybe a fake out next turn with that Incineroar popping onto the field and getting Intimidate on its own. Both Volcaronas are sitting there. We'll see the interaction between the two of them. Let's see which one's faster. Looks like that's Jame. Seems to have a little bit more speed investment across the board by what we've seen so far. Gets that Quiver Dance up as Kyle does exactly the same. And now it's going to be a case of how do you knock out the Volcarona on the opposing sides of the field, because we can see a sneak peek and that Landorus has access to Stone Edge.
It does, and if that move connects, that would be a really simple way to knock out the Volcarona. Unfortunately for Kyle, though, he has to worry about the fake out coming out from that Incineroar this turn, and then he has to worry about the move's accuracy on top of all that, as it's not the most accurate move in the metagame.
Certainly not. Fake out coming out onto Landorus, followed up by a Fiery Dance. Probably not enough to pick up the KO unless you get that Fiery Dance boost there, which is exactly what Hamey got. Will be able to knock out the Landorus next turn, but another Quiver Dance coming out from Kyle's Volcarona. I really like that play, being able to just boost over the top of Hamey's Pokemon.
And Kyle very smartly using that boost to threaten Jaime and to sort of control what the Volcarona goes for this turn. His Volcarona is going to be faster and it's going to have a higher special attack stat. Definitely so. Go for another Quiver Dance.
Yeah, I mean, once you've got one, why not go for two? And once you've got two, let's go for three. Why not? Landorus gets knocked out, though, by the Fiery Dance coming out from Hamey's Volcarona as a non-intimidated Incineroar goes for that Flare Blitz. Does about 50%, just over, to Volcarona on Kyle's side of the field. And now that Landorus isn't left on Kyle's side of the field and Volcarona on the opposing side of the field is looking pretty threatening, it's going to be really down to whether Kyle has enough gas in the tank to knock out Volcarona on Hamey's side of the field before really bad happens to Volcarona on Kyle's.
I mean, if there's one way you can try and knock out a Volcarona, it's with a Pokemon like Urshifu. I don't think that Kyle necessarily wants to have the Urshifu target the opposing Volcarona, given what happened in Game 1, but really, you have to go for that at this point. Fortunately for Kyle, he is running Protect on his Volcarona, so you can go for the attack into the opposing Volcarona, hopefully get that knockout, hopefully not get that burn, and then you can worry about the Incineroar in turn when the Volcarona is no longer on the field and you don't have to worry about some weird shenanigans happening to your Urshifu.
Indeed, as Aqua Jet does come out from Kyle's Urshifu. It doesn't proc the Flame Body from that Aqua Jet. Fiery Dance just following up the Volcarona to easily pick up the KO on Hamey's Volcarona. Flare Blitz does come out from the Incineroar, does land into the Volcarona. Is it enough? Yes, it is. That Volcarona on Kyle's side of the field, maybe slightly greedy, trying to go for more Quiver Dances than maybe was necessary, does get knocked out by that Flare Blitz, and it's going to be Urshifu and the Zacian on the field. The two Pokemon that were burnt in the last game, but in good health this time, and able to launch out their attacks at full power.
And there's only so much that cycling intimidates in and out of the field will do for Jaime, given that the Urshifu, again, is guaranteed to critical hit when it attacks with Surging Strikes. So this is honestly the best position that Kyle can be in at this point. It was unfortunate that Flare Blitz ended up knocking out the Volcarona on his side of the field, but at least he was able to take out the opposition and put them both in this position where these Pokemon are, they're going to be switching around a little, but I think everybody knows what Landorus, Incineroar, Rillaboom do at this point in the metagame. And I feel like that's going to work to Kyle's favor. You know that if the Landorus and the are switching out this turn, it's going to be the Rillaboom. You know that if you attack the Rillaboom with those water type attacks, it's not going to do as much damage. So as a result, you just have to focus in on, okay, well, which Pokemon is going to switch when? Is it going to be a manual switch? Is it going to be a parting shot or a U-turn? And then once you decide on that, you just target the Surging Strikes and spot that you think is going to remain on the field.
Yeah, I think the big question for me is, which one of these Pokemon does switch out for Hamey into that Rillaboom to take a Surging Strikes, because that really depends on where you launch your Play Rough, Behemoth Blade or Close Combat into, and of course where you launch your Surging Strikes into. And of course, Landorus holding that Rocky Helmet could be trained to survive one of the Surging Strikes, and if that's the case, then it's going to be taking a lot of damage and put itself into range of this Rillaboom that's just switched in.
Yeah, well, close combat will certainly not do Zacian any favors. Missing the knockout also dropped defense and special defense by one stage, followed up by a speed drop thanks to Rock Tomb. So Zacian definitely getting those stat drops for its trouble, as we see Surging Strikes will successfully connect with that Landorus, but that Rocky Helmet damage will activate 3 times. Landorus with just enough health to force all 3 of those hits, and that Urshifu, as a result, is left in range of what a Grassy Glide easily from the opposing Rillaboom.
But if I'm not mistaken, this grassy terrain is going to be ending this turn. If that's the case, then Urshifu actually looks like it's in a good spot. Both of Kyle's Pokemon are able to protect, and so you can force a position where Incineroar comes back in on Hamy's side of the field. You can burn the Fake Out, and then you're against 2 Pokemon that aren't really able to offer any defensive play of their own, especially when they're not able to switch about. And it doesn't really matter how much health Zacian is at, it's going to be able to knock out a Rillaboom regardless. So you could double protect, knock out the Incineroar fairly comfortably between the Surging Strikes and the Behemoth Blade or a close combat. And then eventually you'll be able to knock out the Rillaboom, whether that's in 1 hit or 2.
Detect from Urshifu, Protect from Zacian will prevent these Pokemon from being flinched or from taking damage in this turn. Fake Out was the move of choice for Rillaboom, whereas Incineroar goes straight for that Flare Blitz into the Zacian. I think Jaime doing a really good job of realizing that the Zacian is the bigger threat out of these 2 Pokemon right now, and like you were saying, the Pokemon on Jaime's side of the field traditionally don't have Protect or won't have a way to stop these incoming attacks. So if you're Kyle, I think that you do safely lock into that close combat, into the Incineroar, and also go for that Surging Strikes and hope that between the 2, you're able to get that knockout.
Exactly, and we've already seen the Incineroar doesn't have a held item that gives it any health back, as Behemoth Blade launches out from the Zacian into that Rillaboom, is going to be picking up a 2-hit KO quite cleanly here. Surging Strikes from the Urshifu launches into the Incineroar. 3 hits it'll take to knock this Incineroar out, but 3 hits is exactly what is needed. That's how Surging Strikes works in this position, and it's going to be able to easily knock out that Incineroar for its troubles. And Rillaboom's going to follow up with Grassy Glide, going into that Urshifu, going to be able to pick up the knockout quite comfortably here. And it's now down to Zacian versus Rillaboom, but Rillaboom has no way to attack before that Zacian could knock it out with a Behemoth Blade.
No, and this game was just such a complete difference from that game 1, and it really goes to show you how important those burns were. When it came down to the end of the game, it was Zacian and Urshifu who did the winning damage for Kyle. So going into game 3, I think that it's a great idea to try and stat up that Volcarona with those Quiver Dances, as will help it deal damage, but I think the Volcarona was more useful just with that Flame Body ability and just trying to get those burns down onto those Pokemon. It's possible you could also maybe go for 2 Quiver Dances rather than the fire type attack that the Volcarona switched to on Jaime's side of the field. So that you can keep on pace with Kyle's Volcarona. We did see Kyle take the advantage in that regard, but given that both those Volcarona were knocked out in the same turn anyways, it felt like it didn't matter as much as the other Pokemon present.
No, and I think, it's going to be one of those things where, if you get a little bit more value from Kyle's side out of the Volcarona rather than sort of Quiver Dancing 3 turns and launching out 1 attack, and maybe you get 2 attacks instead, then the game becomes a little bit cleaner. Especially if you can catch, if the Volcarona on, if it was able to knock out the Volcarona on Jaime's field 1 turn earlier, then maybe you can launch a 2+ Fiery Dance into a Landorus or a Rillaboom, and then your Zacian feels really comfortable because you stop the Intimidate cycle, you stop any sort of shenanigans coming in that can stop the Zacian launching out all of the damage that it wants to do. And potentially you get a burn on the Urshifu for your troubles, but maybe that's okay when your opponent can't do as much damage or they've knocked into lower health ranges.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what adjustments both Jaime and Kyle have locked into going into this game 3, as this has really been a fun set to watch, even though El Salvador is already contention in this tournament. Seeing these two trainers really battle it out neck and neck has been super exciting. Volcarona and Rillaboom out on the field for Jaime, the Zacian and the Volcarona out on the field for Kyle.
Yeah, and I believe this is the same lead as we had game 2, sorry. But either way, the Volcaronas are able to set up there. I'd be quite surprised if we didn't see something like a Landorus or a Urshifu come in for Kyle here to start putting pressure on that Volcarona. I would have maybe liked to see one of them led off here with the Volcarona, so you can do a little bit of pressure while setting up your own Volcarona. But in this position, if the both Volcaronas are able to set up their Quiver Dance, then I think it's going to be Kyle that's on the better end of it with the way that these Volcaronas have been trained.
And I really like the switch into Urshifu here as well, because we've seen Jaime bring the same 4 Pokemon in both of the games 1 and 2. And by switching in the Urshifu, even though it does get intimidated, it will have a significant type advantage against the Volcarona and the Landorus and the Incineroar that you have to assume is the back of Jaime's party. So even though these Volcarona take a fairly passive turn, both going for Quiver Dance, again, we see Jaime's Volcarona outspeed the first time. It's really nice that Kyle was able to get the Urshifu out on the field in a very comfortable position to threaten that big damage to the opposing Volcarona. It doesn't look like he's going to be taking advantage of it quite yet, which is understandable given how key Urshifu is in this matchup. But the pressure being there, I think, really is going to force Jaime either go on the defense with Volcarona or go for a second switch.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, Aqua Jet is something that Jaime is definitely going to be aware of. But equally, Giga Drain is a Pokemon, is a move of choice on Pokemon like Volcarona these days, rather than its secondary same type attack bonus move. And so, could be a Giga Drain with grassy terrain coming out here. But no, instead we see the Volcarona just switching out for Jaime's side of the field and Rillaboom coming in its place.
And the Landorus Therian coming out onto the field in place of the Urshifu for Kyle. So those Intimidates are going to be a bit more critical onto the opposing side of the field. Kyle going on the offense from Volcarona into the opposing, bringing it down in yellow. Jaime's Landorus going for a U-turn, allow to adjust, but I highly doubt that the Volcarona will be making appearance now, given the Landorus on the field, given how fast the Volcarona is on Kyle's side. But it's another adjustment. There is no Incineroar in this game. Instead, it is Xerneas.
Yeah, I like that adjustment there for Jaime, but unfortunately, Xerneas, I just don't think it's going to be able to break through that Volcarona very easily. And the damage that the Landorus on Jaime's side of the field took in that turn to be able to get that U-turn out was pretty critical. I mean, it's not going to be able to take any other attacks from the Volcarona, even if it flinches this turn and the Geomancy goes up, as is what's happening here. We're still going to have the Volcarona be able to take attacks from the Xerneas and be able to knock out the Landorus in one.
It's unfortunate that Kyle's Landorus is stuck out on the field while this is happening. He does have the opportunity to go for a U-turn to adjust, but whatever Pokemon that comes in at this point is going to be taking a ton of damage from a possible Dazzling Beam or an outright Moonblast if Jaime decides to ignore the Volcarona entirely. And given that Kyle has also decided to bring his restricted Pokemon to this game, unfortunately for Jaime, that again, whatever coming out onto the field in the next turn is going to take so much damage. There's going to be that Fiery Wrath. There's going to be the Behemoth Blade. And Jaime can protect. Jaime can like switch and try and mitigate it. But at the end of the day, I think that Xerneas is just really not the Pokemon you want in this matchup.
No, I think, it's a great Pokemon to be dealing with the Urshifu. Then you can get your Volcarona going a little bit safely. But now you're in a position where you're just taking attacks, at least for a couple of turns, because all of these Pokemon are just doing so much damage. So Rillaboom goes out into the Volcarona on Jaime's side of the field, and a substitute comes up from the Xerneas, so interesting play there. We see the Behemoth Blade, of course, following up from the Zacian into the substitute onto the Xerneas, so going to be surviving another turn, but may not have the opportunity to go for another substitute, given that the Volcarona on Kyle's side of the field did get another Quiver Dance up that turn.
Yeah, it's a really interesting tech that we've been seeing on Xerneas to have that substitute, as it does give you the opportunity to stall through turns a lot easier than using something like Protect. But usually if Xerneas is running substitute, it means they don't have access to Dazzling Gleam. So good information for Kyle. He only has to worry about one of these Pokemon at a time, and again, neither of these Pokemon are necessarily afraid of the damage that Xerneas do. It's only the Volcarona that he has to be careful of.
Wow. Exactly, and yet another Quiver Dance coming out from Kyle's Volcarona, so really leaning hard into that, making sure it can do adequate damage to Xerneas on Jaime's side of the field. Volcarona on Jaime's side of the field does go for a Quiver Dance of its own, and of course we saw the Behemoth Blade going into the protecting Xerneas slot, so no damage there, just a little bit more recovery from Xerneas on Jaime's side of the field, and now maybe that Xerneas is in an okay spot.
It's tough to say. I'm very curious how much damage this Volcarona on Jaime's side of the field is going to be able to do to Kyle's Zacian, as Kyle ignored the Volcarona for a couple of turns, and that gave Jaime the opportunity to get those stat boosts and really become a threat again on that Pokemon.
Yeah, we see the Fiery Dance coming out from Volcarona on Kyle's side of the field, doing just over half damage, getting a special attack boost as well in the process. Jaime going for a Moonblast onto this Zacian, getting a special attack drop, which definitely won't be impactful in this turn, as Zacian is unlikely to be able to move again. Fiery Dance knocking out that Zacian and sending it back to Kyle. And now that that's been dealt with, it's going to be a little bit slower pace for this Volcarona on Kyle's side of the field to be able to wrap up any win here. It can knock out pretty much any Pokemon it likes. It can definitely take the hits well enough, but it can only target one Pokemon at a time, and especially if that Xerneas gets a substitute up, it could be quite a long match here for Kyle to take a win.
It could be, and you also have to remember that Jaime has Landorus in the back of his party as well, in addition to that Rillaboom. So we could see this Volcarona be at least threatened by a Rock-type move when the two Pokemon come out on the field next to each other. And if Jaime plays it that way, in the I know you need to target Landorus, otherwise you win the game kind of way, that could certainly give him an opening. And I would like to see how he's going to use that, as we're getting this game. That just does so much damage.
Oh, yeah, critical hit coming out here from the Fiery Dance, Kyle's Volcarona, and that is easily going to be able to pick up the knockout, ignoring all of the special defense boosts there from the Geomancy Xerneas. The Struggle Bug coming out from Volcarona on Jaime's side of the field, and is going to drop the special attack of Kyle's Volcarona, but I think the damage has been done on the special attack front. I think he's now down to 3 stages of increased special attack rather than 4, but I think you're okay with that if you're Kyle, especially when you see that potentially the second and only other attacking move on Corona is Struggle Bug coming out here. That Urshifu might be a lot safer than Kyle first thought.
Yeah, the Urshifu, not only that, we've seen the Urshifu do about 50% damage to Volcarona on Jaime's field. It's possible that Aqua Jet will be enough damage to KO it outright. So just very well played, I think. Kyle, keeping an eye on these win conditions. The Landorus does make an appearance for Jaime, but it's at such low health that I don't think it's going to really have the opportunity to attack. If he's able to buy some time for that Volcarona to maybe go for another Quiver Dance or two, that could be a possible win condition. But there's really no stopping this Urshifu now that it's been unleashed on the field.
And speaking of Pokemon that have been unleashed, Volcarona launches out a Fiery Dance, getting another special attack boost there onto Landorus and knocking out Jaime and sending it back to Jaime for the final time in this set. Fiery Dance coming out from Volcarona on Jaime's side of the field, but does have to take a Surging Strikes for its troubles. Only one hit necessary, and no one-hit Flame Bodies coming out this time around. So Kyle left with both Volcarona and Urshifu versus Rillaboom in the back for Jaime. And it's looking like we're about to wrap up this set. And wrap up this match between the United States and El Salvador, with the United States taking a 5-game win versus El Salvador.
Have we had the results come in from the other match for the United States? I'm just curious.
I believe it's still showing 4-1 at the moment on the website, so no definitive answer, but we're definitely 5 wins for the United States now. To El Salvador's 1. So we'll have to see. We'll keep a check on the results there for the rest of the evening, as it is Tournament Sunday, of course, or Match Sunday, with the final games being played. But I want to give a huge shout out to both of these players. I really enjoyed that match and seeing, which one of these trainers would come out on top, because after that first game, I wasn't 100% sure that Kyle could really come back and have any sort of commanding win, because Jaime played that so well. I just had the position the whole way through. The burns obviously helped, and a little bit of critical hit going on there that did make it so that Kyle had a lot less opportunities. But even so, it was definitely a close one, and you could see the way that Jaime had trained his Pokemon were really effective in that matchup.
Yeah, I loved how the trainers made adjustments from games 1 into game 2. Unfortunately for Jaime, I think he made a little bit too big of an adjustment with that Xerneas making an appearance, possibly predicting the absence of the Zacian, given how it fared in games 1 and 2, and maybe trying to capitalize on that. But Kyle just recognizing that even though the Zacian was in danger, the rest of the team was enough to support it, because game 1 really was the worst case scenario for him. I mean, you got both burns, you got that crit, like that is it. So
yeah,
I think as weird as it is to consider, I think that immense bad luck actually gave him confidence with the Zacian going into games 2 and 3, because he knew that he could still make it worthwhile, even if, the worst thing happened.
Definitely. And with that, we are going to be taking a short break here. We'll be back very soon for the final match of the stream today. So that's it from us for the moment. We will see you very soon.